Hello and welcome to a special edition of the show coming to you from Cape Town in South Africa. Now, being a full-time musician is something of a challenge when it comes to making a living in South Africa, but for the country's best-selling band, Freshlyground, success has meant the chance to concentrate on their music full-time. The seven-member group from across Africa truly represents the diversity of the continent and the Rainbow Nation. Now, we're speaking with two of them. Zulani Mahola, the lead singer, grew up near Port Elizabeth in South Africa and has had an interesting career ranging from acting to opening for pop star Robbie Williams. And Kyla Rose, the violinist of the group, studied jazz at University of Cape Town and adds her own unique sound to the music of Freshlyground. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you very much.
I've got to ask you where the name Freshlyground comes from. It could be coffee, it could be beef.
That's good. It's a mystery.
Yeah?
Even to us, it's a mystery. I think we were trying to find a name that was original and that also spoke of the mix, you know, in our band, and of the creative mix, and also the mix of the members of the band. And Freshlyground just seemed to be the best option.
Before we go for any more questions, let's just listen to the sound of Freshlyground.
Did you hear the news on the radio today? People have agreed to give their love away. I can't wait to be there in line. No, no. Politicians have agreed to honor and obey. They'll come down and listen to what the people say. I can't wait to be there in line. No, no. Whoa, doobie-doobie-doobie-doo-bye.
Considering how diverse you are, you're incredibly diverse, not just from like in terms of color and background and everything else, also your actual interests and so on. So how do you keep it together? How do you manage to keep such a diverse group together and focused?
I think it's part of what has made us successful is the mix of people and of styles, and that's exactly the kind of music we make. It is that mix, and it appeals to a broad range of people, and that's, I mean, just that fact has kept us together. I think we embrace our diversity.
Now, you have an incorporation of styles. I know you describe yourself as a South African Afro-fusion band, and you have elements of traditional South African music, kwela, and other sounds as well. How would you describe what the music and what it represents?
I think it's quite global, the music. I mean, it has its roots in Africa, but it's also, I mean, we're people of the world as well. You know, we're not just Africans or South Africans. We've listened to things from all over the world all our lives, and we take in influences every day. I mean, we listen to pop, we listen to rock, whatever. So that all comes in, and we can go anywhere in the world, and people can identify with the music in some way. And so I think it's quite global.
Well, it's true. You have them all dancing in the aisles, both old and young. How come it's such a wide range?
I have no idea.
But it works.
But it works.
It works.
I think, I mean, the diversity appeals to people. There's something for everyone on stage, you know. There's an older drummer, there's a younger singer and violinist, and there's a mix, and I think people really enjoy that.
Who do you think of as your audience, though?
Everyone.
Yeah, so you don't think it's got to be for a
Not
certain...
at all. Not at all. Nothing specific. Anything goes.
Now, to both of you, and Zulani first, what do you bring to the band yourself? What is it about your own creative elements you think you bring to Freshlyground?
Well, I usually write the lyrics in the band, and I've always been interested in words, you know, and stories and things. So I think when you're listening to the CD, that's maybe what I bring, and I think I've got a good tone.
We're going to hear some of it in a minute.
And on stage, well, as you said, I've got a theatrical background, so I'm quite interested in performance. So the live element is really quite interesting. I think when you come to our shows, you're struck by our, not just myself, but everybody's energy in the band.
And
Yeah.
Kyla Rose, you know, with the violin, you pluck it, you do different things, yeah?
Yeah, it's kind of always been my passion with violin playing is not to take it the normal route, is always to kind of take it outside of the realms of classical playing or jazz playing, and I listen to a lot of strange violinists. That's kind of what appeals to me.
Who's a
is when
strange
the
violinist?
violin doesn't sound like a violin. That's what I like. So I like to bring that element into the band, and also with the live performance, I think that's the part I enjoy the most, is being on stage and interacting with the band and dancing and getting a bit wild. I really
And
join
there's
us.
7 of you. So, I mean, talking about the others, what do they bring in that really makes it a different sound? Is it the fact that they come from different, I mean, social
I think
backgrounds?
probably
even?
it is. It is a lot to do with that fact. And also, as Kyla said, there's quite a wide range in ages in the band. Our drummer, he's 46 and Kyla's 24. So we've experienced a whole range of...
The musical influence is very
Exactly.
wide.
Right.
So that brings, that's a great thing to bring to a band, is
Yeah.
that, like, I don't know, it must be over 20 years, the scope of music that we have within our 7 members.
Now, even when you have, bands of the same age, of the same influences, they spend half their time arguing over creative stuff. So how, when you're so diverse, how do you avoid not spending all your
Yes.
time arguing?
It's not always easy. Who says we avoid it? We do. I mean, I think we're nice people. I think in the end we wanna get to the bottom of it. We want to get to the root of the songs. To the music, and that's really what counts at the end of the day. We might have our fights and our arguments and our conflicts, but I mean, we've got to write music.
I think
And
we
how-
all we all have the same passion for the music, and that's what really helps us not to argue, is that really it's about creating a song and not about what style or how we're going to pitch it to the public, just really about that song in the moment of its creation.
Is the African roots, is the African theme an important part? Is it one thing that brings you together? I mean, how important is it for you to have that true African representation in the sound?
I think it's just something that came naturally within the band. We've all grown up in Southern Africa, and so that musical influence is there without us even having to try and bring it forward. So I don't think that's even something that we discuss too much. It kind of just always comes up. Julio, our guitarist, who's from Mozambique, he has a very strong African influence, like the style from Mozambique, and he brings that into the songs all the time. So it's not really something that we have to try hard for.
Now, as such a successful group, you're doing so well, you can afford to concentrate on your music full time. I mean, you're commercially successful, and presumably this is rare in South Africa, that people can say, look, I'll drop my job and I can do this full time now. So how important is it to you to make sure you maintain that commercial success? Do you stay on track so you don't have to start looking at other jobs?
It's pretty important. It's pretty important. I mean, that's why we kind of, what you asked about conflict and arguing all the time, that's why we're going to try and avoid that as much as possible, or work out conflicts, so that we can ensure the longevity of this whole thing.
And I mean, from the other musicians in the country, it really must be a struggle, is it, for them to make sure they can actually go full time?
It is for many. I think there's a handful of bands and musicians who manage to make a living just purely out of music, and many of them not purely out of one thing, I think. I mean, I think that's also something that we've really managed with the band, is that we don't really play in other bands either. It's Freshlyground 7 days a week, pretty much, which is a great gift for us.
8 days a week. 26 hours a day.
26 hours
You wake
a
up
day.
before you go to bed.
400 days a year.
Now, how important is it to succeed outside Africa for you guys?
Good question.
Is it, I mean, because, you're an African sound, you're a diverse African group. I wonder how, for you, when you look at the outside markets, how much that plays into it.
I think it is something that we're trying to do. I mean, personally, for me, I'm happy to be successful here and reach as much of Africa as possible. But obviously, you want to take your music to as many people as possible and in many parts of the world as possible, and also to spread the energy that we give on stage and in our music, and for everybody to experience that.
Now Zolani, when it comes to the influences you have, you're a key person with the lyrics. How much are you influenced, for example, by the sounds out of America? Everyone thinks that the US leads a lot of the industry in music. You pay attention?
I suppose so. These days I haven't got much time to listen to the radio or to go out and buy a lot of CDs. Especially, I think I'm getting less and less interested in American popular music. It's becoming more and more diluted and more thin for me. So I think in terms of current American music, not that heavily influenced at all.
And what about Europe? Because you won the European MTV award for best African band, best African act, which made you the first South African group to get that kind of award.
Although I don't know how. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I was going to say I don't know how old or new that award is.
Really?
Might be a year old. We're the first.
Yeah. Well, the point being though is that Europe seems to be a little more accepting when it comes to African music. I know a lot of top African artists go and live in Paris and they work out of Europe as well. So, I mean, do you find Europe a little more accepting of the sound? Do you like, are the fans more responsive?
Well, we haven't played in America,
Yeah.
and we've had great response in Europe. So they are very receptive. And
it's maybe easier to get into Europe. It seems like the American market is so saturated with its own stuff.
Now, when you perform with artists like Femi Kuti and Miriam Makeba and so on, how much do you find that you draw on some of the talent, the history of the African music? How much is that? I mean, what is it like to be with those kind of artists?
It's amazing. I mean, they're people that you've listened to for a large part of our lives.
But of course, you're the sound that of progression as well.
In a way, like it's a bridging kind of thing. So it's amazing, and to hear their opinions of us as well, that's quite an awesome thing.
Well, tell me about the new album, Ma Chérie. Can we get a sample actually of something from that?
Well,
That was
I do
smooth.
believe you can.
A little preview.
Okay, this is one of the singles on the album. It's a song called Pot Belly. Even though I have fat thighs, flabby arms, a pot belly still gives good loving. Fat thighs, flabby arms, a pot belly still gives good loving. Fat thighs, flabby arms, a pot belly still gives good loving. Well, still gives good loving.
Well done. Now, in terms of that, coming together with the ideas, what was the driving force behind the album? Was there a particular theme or certain ideas you had?
No.
Not really. We, as a band, we're always in rehearsal and working and writing new material. So an album is really just it's like an exhibition of our new work, a showcase of what we've done in the last 2 years since we released Nomvula. It's not really like we got together and thought, okay, we need this many songs and this is how they're going to sound.
So what's the process? Where does the sound come from? Does someone come and say, listen, I've got an idea and let's try this out?
No, it's exactly like that. It's a jam session usually. It's all a very workshopped environment.
Now, as a group, you're very you're like many of the sort of people who are sort of prominent in South Africa. You do a lot of work raising money for social causes, HIV/AIDS. You raise money for the Desmond Tutu Foundation as well.
Correct.
So, in terms of as a group, do you talk about that social responsibility and what you should be doing?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's important for us. The reason that we're so popular is because people like our music. People support means a lot to us, and we feel that in South Africa, especially being in such a poor country, I think, in developing country, that there's a lot that we can do. I mean, there's a lot that we can do in the position of power that we find ourselves in. So it's quite important for us to be part of this initiative.
What about in the songs themselves?
Within the songs?
Yeah.
We do touch on a few social issues, not necessarily all to do with HIV and AIDS. A few of the lyrics that I write are to do with empowering people to kind of increase their own self-esteem and not rely necessarily on the government or on religion or just the powers that be, and kind of create their own individual power and to believe in themselves.
Do you get that? Do you get that feedback from the fans saying, "Listen, we want you to touch on these issues. We relate to these particular things." Do you find that the fans are a driving force in any way for what you do?
I think the fans are more kind of affirmation of what we do. They more support what we do. They'll come and say, "Oh, that lyric in that song, it really touches me, or it appeals to me, or I'd like that song where you talk about love. It makes me think of my boyfriend or my first date." So it's really just affirmation. It's not like they instruct you. I had this experience and won't you please write a song for me. It's more kind of, they're just a positive reinforcement for us.
So, because the way you described it, your music is formed through jamming almost.
Yes, I think our performance in some ways is also as good as our audience is. As good as the energy that we get from the audience is what we give out as well. A great audience can make for a great gig.
How do you find the European audiences react in comparison with the African ones? Was there a visible difference?
Colour.
Yeah, well, apart from looking out there and saying these aren't Africans.
Wait a minute.
Where am I? No, I mean, apart from
Sorry, strike that on the record. I didn't say a word.
no, but in terms of the vibrancy, the energy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Some places are a little bit more reserved.
Yeah.
But on the whole, we get a very positive audience response. But I think, yes, in Europe, the audiences are a little bit more reserved than our audiences here.
But also here we've got a name and we've got a following, and people we're visible to people, and you go over to Europe and maybe somebody's heard of you. So it's a little bit
Getting to know you.
Yeah.
exactly. You just jump right in for the kiss, It's just like kind of
Sweet foreplay.
circling around each other a little bit.
Is it important though? I mean, is it going to be important for you guys to make it big on, for example, in the US markets, that you can say that we're global, for example?
I don't think so. I mean, it would be nice to play in America and to see what the response is, and if it works out, it works out. But we're not hanging our hooks
It's not
on.
the be-all and end-all, I think. Not for me, and not for my career, I don't think. I think it would be nice, obviously, to play there, but I think what's important is that we're building an industry here, which is still in its beginning stages, and I think as a band, as Freshlyground, we're really contributing somehow to the growth of our own South African music industry, and that's very important for us.
So where does it go from here? You say you're a diverse group. You sort of hold it together with all these differences, and you're jamming sort of compilations. Where does it go? Do you have a long-term plan, a long-term goal?
10 albums, a jet.
For everyone.
For everyone, yeah.
Yeah.
A house in Spain, maybe.
So do we get to find out, is it freshly ground coffee or beef?
I hope it's not beef.
Not
Is
beef,
that like
please.
corned beef in a can? Doesn't sound
I think that's the way of saying
not
minced beef in some parts of the
appealing.
world.
Oh, no.
Listen, Kala Rose and Zolani, thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank
Really
you.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us. Remember, if you have any ideas or any interests that you'd like us to feature on the show, just send us an email to riz@aljazeera.net. We'll see you next time. Well, Street Talk's coming up next.